Okay, cool. Hey, this is Ryan. I'm joined with Justin Silverio of Open Letter Marketing today, and I wanted to ask ask Justin questions from our group and maybe learn a little bit about his business and what he has going on. Justin, if you want to maybe take a second and tell everybody about yourself and some things we might not know.
Yeah, sure. So I am over on the other side of the coast. I'm in Boston. I've been a real estate investor since 2010. Started off with rehabs, and then I actually went reverse. I did more wholesales. So today I'm still doing a lot of wholesale deals, but also doing larger development deals in the city of Boston, where I'm doing multifamily condo conversions. Um, so I've kind of done everything from renovations to new construction, and now my focus is primarily wholesaling, as well as some larger development deals.
Now, do you only do your wholesaling in Boston, or do you have like other markets that you hit too?
I do most of my wholesaling is in the suburbs,
Okay.
and then in the city I'll usually do development, but I do have some wholesale deals in the city as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. And so, just to give an idea, like what sort of volume are you doing in developments and wholesale and that kind of thing?
Development, I'm only doing like one or two development deals at a time. Most of these projects are like 2 year, 2.5 year projects, and total capital outlay is like $3 to $4 million. So that's on the development side. Wholesales we'll probably do anywhere from 10 to 20 a year. But with my wholesales, some of them are a little bit more, they're a little bit more challenging, I would say, wholesale deals. For instance, one of them that I have now is a multifamily we're trying to evict. So we have to go through the eviction process, but there's potential to add a third unit. So finding the right buyers for those, where the wholesale deal is going to be much larger, like 150 to 200,000 on those types of wholesale deals.
Oh, wow.
So we don't do huge volume, but I always look for like really large margins.
Okay. And so you started, now I believe I know a little bit of your story. You started on the investor side and then you created your mail house out of that, or built it on top of it, kind
Yeah.
of. Okay. So with your investor side, what describe your team? What's your team on the real estate investment side?
So it's myself and I have an acquisition specialist.
Okay.
Any development deals that I take on, I generally partner with another investor. So they take on all of the project management side. I do enjoy the construction a lot, and it's like a personal thing. I love the construction part of it, and I've learned it really well. Like I know how to build houses. I know how not to build a house because of like you have to frame it this way because in finish you need it to be constructed this way so you can do all these different details later on down the line. However, looking at the best interest and use of my time, I kind of took that equation out of it, or took that part out of the equation, because I just don't have the time to do it. So mostly I'll partner with somebody on the development side to project manage the whole project. And I'll really just get into it, like reviewing kind of the architectural details. I'll walk through at certain stages of the project to make sure it's going in the right direction and the end result is looking exactly how we wanted it to look.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
Okay. So like what I'm curious about is like so like the deal you're doing where you have all the tenants you got to deal with on the wholesale side, right?
Mhm.
And you have an acquisitionist on your team. So is your acquisitionist dealing with a lot of that side of it? Okay, so they're doing more
Yes.
than just like sitting down and negotiating a deal. They're doing a lot.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So if they have to go through any sort of eviction or working with an attorney, so it's mostly they're just connecting the dots between. So this one here, we have the seller involved. We're not purchasing it until we get an eviction notice,
Hmm.
and the people actually leave the property. So the acquisitions person got in touch with our attorney that we work with. So really, it's just myself, the attorney, and the seller working with just making sure everything's lining up. So it doesn't take too much time out of the acquisitions person's day to just set everything up, and then I just kind of monitor the situation. But when we do get closer to the person's going to evict, then the acquisition specialist is going to go back and they're actually looking for the disposition. side as well. So they're going to
Okay.
work on the disposition and look to who we can sell this property to.
Cool. That's gonna be my next question.
Yeah.
Uh, so, and then, so your acquisitions person, how long has he been with you, or he or she?
He's been with me for almost a year now.
Okay. And full time, that's all they do is your,
No, he's also a real estate agent.
okay.
So he does some agency stuff, but not really a lot lately.
Okay. Cool. For me, that's part of like trying to figure out, okay, how can I expand and scale and go through and, try, what are the ways I can do that to basically maximize my time and effort and trying to reach out, because I get scattered, man. I got like, it's just like you start
Yeah.
getting like so many deals going on, whether it's agent or other stuff. And then I'm just like, oh God, I don't have room. I don't have the bandwidth for another
Mhm.
one. Right.
Yeah.
And so when you were getting going, it was just you and you were a solopreneur, right? Kind of thing. When did you start maybe adding, and I don't know, I didn't ask too, do you have VAs or anything like that too? Or is it just the guy and that's it?
Yeah. Anything else? So I utilize my team in open letter marketing
Okay.
for like smaller stuff. But when I started, yes, I used VAs very often.
Mhm.
And I think that's normal what you're going through. Everyone goes through it. Anytime you scale from doing one or two deals to anything more, and even when you get one or two deals, you're still learning real estate and how to get kind of systemized and set up. And figuring out a system in your business takes a ton of time. So a lot of people don't want to set up those systems because they're like, I know it's going to take me so long to do that. And I feel like I'm losing so much momentum on everything else that I know I need to get done. So they don't set up a system. And anytime you scale, you run into issues. Like you have system breakdowns, even if you do have it systemized, because as you start to get more deals, you need more to figure out how to make sure that your time is focused on the right things.
Mhm.
So what I did was I leveraged my time with virtual assistants, and some of them worked out, some of them didn't, but I highly leveraged them, as well as like technology. So when somebody called in when was working full time, because I was an investor, well, I had a full time job for the first 5 years of being an investor. So that really helped me out on figuring out where I need to set my time and where I need to leverage technology and virtual assistants to help me out. Because like you, when I got a deal, like I'd forget about my marketing because I just didn't have the time to continue to do it, because I was still mailing out all my letters. When I started, I would mail out all my letters. I didn't want to outsource it. I didn't have the capital to outsource it. So I was doing it myself. So similar to, I think, a lot of people, when they start to get deals, they stop their marketing.
Mhm.
So how do they keep those things in place where they can continue to market while they're working on those deals? That was a hard thing to do.
Right. Well, I'm sure we're the only two people that have ever done that, where we stopped marketing completely when we had deals going on. Um, yeah, boy, that's definitely, a roadblock. And it's not even just the bandwidth side, because you're like, okay, I've got all this stuff going on. And then like, if I have more calls start coming in or something, that's part of it. But then just the time to set up the campaign and make sure you're not, sending out a garbage list, or, I'm in the process of trying to figure out some of the automation with that, so that I know that X number of pieces are happening
Mhm.
each month. And then adding some more bulk, mailers and stuff to that, for the occasional addition into the flow. But I don't, so that's, that's exactly, I think, what most of us are going through until we get to that point. What are the things that you said you did a really good job of leveraging the VAs and systematizing that? What are some of the ninja tricks, or some of the things that you did that, if you had started doing in the beginning, would have made your life a lot easier? Like when you evolved?
Yeah. So when I looked back, I looked at where should my time be spent, right? Obviously on the phone,
Mhm.
working out deals, all that stuff. And what was I doing that was continuous? So if I found any repetitive tasks that I continuously did, and I think back at the time, like it was like scrubbing Craigslist, looking at my spreadsheet and making sure that everybody that called in and said, remove me from your list, we could remove them from the list. Right. So all those repetitive things, I said, all right, how do I take myself out of the equation and teach somebody else how to do that?
Mhm.
So from there, I would just create videos about and show the virtual assistant of what I'm doing and how to do it, and create that like video instructional guide, and then basically hire somebody that could do that. And I mean, I could go probably an hour into how to hire a VA and how to test them out before you do it to make sure that they're going to work out. But I won't go down that path.
Well, I could probably go into an hour on how to not hire a VA and go through like
Right.
I could definitely go on that, man. I've struggled there, but yeah, yeah. So I wish I had started doing that sooner, because I heard people saying that, like, record videos, start writing down all your processes and procedures, and start, what I mean, trying to go through all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was, oh no, I know I can handle that, no problem. I don't need to write all that stuff down, or I don't need to start video recording. And everyone said hire a VA. So you hire a VA, and I don't have anything to give them as far as like, so then what do? Well, figure it out. We want to go to this. You said you know how to do real estate VA stuff. Go do that stuff, right?
Mhm.
And it didn't work very well. So but now I have the thing where I'm videoing looming and like trying to document stuff, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I need to go and do that. And I look, and I already did that same thing and already made that video 4 or 5 months ago, and already made that process. So it's kind of sometimes hard to keep track of all the different trainings and recordings. How did you keep track of that stuff?
So I use like Google Drive,
Uh-huh.
and I had a folder for all instructional videos, like virtual assistant instructional videos, and then I would just drop in, like, we didn't have Loom back then.
Mm-hmm.
Loom is amazing. I use Loom like almost every day now, so that's a great way to record all your videos. And then I would just give it a really a title that would be understandable. So I would put everything in there, and I would also have a document on watch this video. This is the task. This is how often you should do it, like once a week or whatever. And this is the process, and like refer back to this video. So I would have like the videos in that folder, as well as a document in there to explain how often they need to do that task, and when I need it by. So that's how I, got pretty organized with kind of their tasks and what I needed to do.
Okay. So for your volume that you're doing, you said you do 10 to 12, but rather large wholesale deals a year, something like that, and then a couple development deals. How much mail are you doing for your own business to get that volume and that gross revenue?
Yeah, so we do about 10 to 15,000 mailers a month right now
Mm-hmm.
to hit that volume. And like this last year, we were going through a little bit of a change in geographic area. So we were changing it up. So I think there were maybe like 2 months that we were revising and switching over to a new market. But in any case, we're ramping up this year to do about 15 to 20,000 because we want to ramp up that volume. When my acquisitions person came on, it probably took him about 3 months to get ramped up to talk to sellers is exactly how I wanted him to. We did tons of role playing before he actually was doing a pretty good job in bringing in deals consistently. So now that he is pretty well ramped up, we're actually expanding our market. That's what we're going through tomorrow. We're going through the new geographic areas, and he's actually starting to pull a lot of the data that we're going to be starting to market.
How far are you still staying in the general area, or are you going completely remote?
Yeah, no, we're staying in the same area, just expanding on different towns and where I think there's better opportunities. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know I've heard that the Boston area is pretty expensive, and um, it's that's why you're doing such low volume, I'm sure, and the big margins. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, my personality, I would never do anything where we have large volume. That's just not the game that I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
We have somebody that, in my market that does 200 deals a year, and they do the same product over and over. They make less margins. I'm much more about much larger deal, much larger on the revenue side than volume.
Kind of a big game hunter, if you will.
Yeah. Yep,
Yeah,
exactly.
I can understand that.
Exactly.
Yeah, someone was like, he's doing 180,000 letters and he's got 12 deals. Like, so it's like, if you're going for big ones, then yeah, like, that makes sense.
Yeah, on average too. So I was talking to the person that does the large volume too. They make on average 60,000 a deal, and it costs them about $15,000 in marketing
Hmm.
per deal. So it's all relative, right? I mean, if you're going to make $20,000 on a deal and you're paying $5,000 to get that deal, then it makes sense. But if it costs you like, $30,000 to make a $20,000 deal, it doesn't make sense. But in my market, I'm making such large profit that I can
Hmm.
spend more money to make that deal. And it's also in much competitive areas, certain markets that I'm in.
Yeah. Seattle's not too crazy different from Boston. Um, but so when, now granted, now there's the theory and there's the practicality of this. And for me personally, I understand the theory of tracking every single number, having all these metrics going through, but when it's the practical side, what level do you think it starts being able to more scale? Because you got to have enough pieces to be able to know that like this many phone calls isn't an
Mhm.
anomaly, right? And this many
Yep.
responses to this many deals. And so when you're first starting, when you're getting going, your volume's lower. How do you what would you say would be the way or the most efficient way to kind of try to metric, and when does it make sense? Because if you're sending out 15 letters, obviously that doesn't make sense to you're not tracking anything, right, from
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, even if you're sending out like 1,000 mailers,
Mhm.
I mean, I think the big thing is like people are like, all right, if I'm doing X, now if my response rate is X on 1,000 mailers, if I increase it to 2,000 mailers, then I should be getting this many more responses. But when you're at that volume, that's not a lot of volume in a big population set. So I think people it's not going to be like one and one. Like you're not going to add just if you're getting this response rate multiplied by 2 and this is what you're going to get. You need a bigger population size to really understand where you're going. And what I would recommend is if you're starting at like sending whatever 1,000 marketing activities or messages, however you're doing it, direct mail, ringless voicemail, whatever, I would always recommend if people, because I think where you're getting at, like when do I start hiring next and know that I have enough to get X number of deals. Um, I think it's going to change depending on not only just the number of pieces that you're putting out, but also like seasonality. So there's a lot of other variations or variables that take into a place that people are not thinking about. For instance, like in the summer, my response rate goes dramatically down, but in the fall and winter, it ramps way up. If I change nothing else, if I don't do anything different, it just happens because seasonality. Less people are selling in the summer, more people are selling in the fall and winter because they don't want to have to go through, it being cold. And if their furnace isn't working, they don't have to deal with that. If it's snowing out and there's holes in their roof. So normally my response rates increase just due to seasonality. So people have to take into account all of that other external forces being taking place. That's why it's really difficult to say if you just increase by 2, you're going to get twice the amount of responses. Does that make sense?
No, totally. And that's some of the problems that that I'm always trying to kind of balance. But then, you think about the same thing. Now, if that's a Northeast winter, I think problem associated with that, right? I think it would be the opposite if you're in, say, Arizona with like air conditioners going
Yep.
out and like,
Yep.
that kind of thing. So it's something to definitely factor in.
Yeah, even
And
investment focus. So just going back, like if people were to say, "What's your response rate?" and I said, it's X percent, and they're
mhm,
like, "Okay, so that's what I should be looking for." It's really difficult to compare yourself with other people because not only for like geographic area, but seasonality, but also investment focus.
mhm.
So if somebody is looking for wholesale deals or they're wholesaling versus somebody else that's rehabbing, I don't know what your investment criteria is, and I don't know how much you want to make per deal. For me, I need to make a lot more money than a lot of my competitors. So my deal rate might be much lower than theirs. So those are all different things to take into account on, response rate, deal rate, getting stuff under contract is what are all these other variables that take into account?
Yeah, you're not looking for a little single family lipstick flip in Pittsburgh,
Yep.
right? Like, yeah, it's gonna. I have a friend in a different group that he's in Ohio, right? And they still handwrite yellow letters. You send out 200, you're gonna get 15 responses on 200 handwritten letters. 15 to 30, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just it's unreal. But the houses are also 20 grand, right? But
Yep.
it's a totally different world. So I can definitely appreciate that. So you going through that, you scaled up your business. You have the guy that you started training and doing role playing with. Did you give him any formal training too to go through, or is it just all you one-on-one with him?
A lot of it was one-on-one. I did have some formal training, but most of it was just really one-on-one.
Okay. And
Yeah,
beforehand, did you
it
have?
was a lot of role playing, to be quite honest.
Okay.
We went back and forth at least a couple times a week, an hour or two, and I would just pretend I was the seller, or I was the investor, and we would just going back and forth on both sides.
Okay. And so is this the first acquisitionist you've had? And okay, how long have you been using an acquisitionist?
So I've had two other people prior to that. So in total, it's been about 2.5 years that I've had somebody else that's been working on the acquisition side.
Okay, cool. So that's awesome. I definitely wanted to know a little more on your real estate side. Maybe if you could give other people maybe just an idea of like how with your company Open Letter Marketing, what sort of volume are you guys doing? Like what as far as mail pieces a month and what all that kind of, because you also have software and you got some other stuff that goes with it too. But just give an idea of like the size of your company and what you're doing.
Yeah, sure. We're doing about a little bit over 1 million mailers a month for investors around the country on the direct mail side. We've really focused on making sure that the product that we're offering it's everything that I use in my own business. So that's the only reason I started Open Letter, is because I was doing something different than any other direct mail company was offering. And I knew that it worked better. Actually, in the beginning, I did a big test between what I was doing versus like your typical yellow letter. And my response rate increased 26.7% over yellow letters. And I think I tested about 100,000 mail pieces to make sure that I had a good population size. So I knew that my products were better and there was a huge void in the market. So that's when I started offering this to other investors around the country. And really, every time that we add new products, it's always based off of what I'm testing and what works well in my investment company. And then I start offering to customers. But right now, we're a little bit over 1 million mailers a month that we're doing for other investors around the country.
So when you made that change, or you at least measured that it was more effective than the yellow letters, because you offer a bunch of different stuff at that time, what was the change? What was the piece that you found, or list or piece or whatever you were doing that had such a big increase?
Yeah, the biggest thing was changing the envelope style. We always had very unique envelope styles, and it increased the open rate. Right, we had handwritten fonts that we actually internally created. So we have different variants on the different letters. So like two A's look different, right? So we looked at those like little details, like what color attracts more people, or what color will get people to like trust us, right? Looking at blues and different colors, what is the meaning behind it? Always having a logo on your letter, because people can remember a logo much better than they can remember a name. So all these little things that is actually really meaningful, looking at the marketing behind the marketing piece and not just slapping something together and just offering it to somebody, really looking at those details and doing a big test to find out if your hypothesis does work out and if your response rate is higher. And not only that, but like, what are the responses back from your customers? So a lot of times I would get a response back, hey, I'm not interested, but I really like your mail piece, right? That was a huge change from the normal go after yourself, like stop sending me stuff. So the goal was to send, regardless of whatever marketing that I'm doing, I want to elicit a positive response from somebody, or have a positive impact. Even if they're not interested in me buying their house, I want them to be like, hey, this was pretty cool, or I like this, but I'm not interested, but I still like this. That will start you off even before you talk to the person with a positive, or you're building rapport even before you talk to the person. And that's really important because I always look at building rapport is probably one of the most critical aspects in what we do, right? If you have other people that you're competing against to buying the house, the person that probably creates the most rapport, granted, if you're still within a window of where you are in price point with other people, you're probably going to get the deal. And I've done that many times where my price was $10,000 or $20,000 lower than my competitor, but I got the deal because my rapport was better. And I do that from the very beginning, even before I talk to somebody. I try to build that rapport, and it's usually through my marketing messages. So that's kind of where we started with Open Letter, was how do we build rapport before we even have a conversation with the person? What are the things that can help out with that?
Okay. I, I definitely agree with that. There are some things you can do though that can get you a good response, but also can get you angry people.
Oh,
The
absolutely.
Street View COVID postcards, just so you know, some
Yes.
sometimes sometimes the reactions are strong, and I've noticed, and I've heard this from actually several other investors, that they get more angry calls since the COVID thing started than prior to that, just because a lot of people are in like like a heightened emotional like state,
Mhm.
right? And it's very interesting. It's like, there's the get off my lawn. You don't have right to take a picture of my lady. It says Google. This is a Google Street View right there. Google did it. Blame them.
Yep.
Kind of thing.
Yeah, it's always a tough like business decision on Open Letter, like what you actually provide versus what you don't believe in. Like yellow, we'll never offer yellow letters because I don't believe in that product at all. The Google Street View, you definitely will get some angry people. I mean, you'll get angry people regardless,
Mhm.
but Google Street View even more so because some people think you actually took the picture in front of their house. So it's all about like everybody has to be pretty cognizant of like how it should be used
Mhm.
and how to respond to people that are really upset about that. So it's tough on Open Letter marketing side, what we offer, what we don't,
Mhm.
versus what's going to truly get a good response.
Absolutely. And I've talked to other people in the same industry, and they've seen correlations even with different parts of the country, what their investors see as far as the color of the mailer. So like at a certain time, pink seems to have a little better response rate
Mm-hmm.
in these areas versus this other area, right? And things like that. What kind of maybe just quick 10,000 foot view sort of trends do you see like that, maybe that you could share with some of the people that catch this?
It's hard here. I can give you some trends that I know specific customers that do very large volume. So in some areas where the price points are a little bit on the lower side, um, standard white postcards, super ugly, plain old postcards actually work really well. In my market, they work terribly.
Mhm.
Letters I've found work twice as well as postcards do. So I don't use postcards really at all in my market. Um, and for other people, a mix of certain postcards with even like an offer price, like we offer, it's called the ROS product. The putting an offer price on the postcard works well in other demographics. It's really hard to pinpoint, and I'm not saying this as like a cop out, but it's so difficult to provide what's going to work in your market until you test it and track it.
Mhm.
Like that's the best that anybody can do. Never rely off even what I'm seeing that works well in my market, that what's going to work in your market. You really have to test it out. And anybody that wants to do really well with marketing and direct to seller marketing has to test the different aspects: direct mail, ringless voicemail, text messaging. Okay, some people are like, I'm not going to text because it's illegal in my area, or I just don't have the confidence. Like I don't want to get mixed up into that. Um, but I would say the biggest thing is like test and track what your results are.
talk about, so you touched on the ROS thing, which is like you're sending someone basically an offer, right? So I believe if you do a letter, I think it's more like a letter of intent that you automate and send out, right?
Yep.
Postcards, you kind of do the same thing, but it seems like that's probably a little bit less effective, I would think, with the postcard on that versus the letter. But my question, well, two questions. One, is that product in InvestorHub yet? And then two, is how, where does this number come from? Like this magical number that you're sending out to people? Because from my side, I'm like, look, if I don't want to be sending something to someone and sending them something that's like pretty damn close to retail, and then I've got to try to backtrack my way out of this thing that I sent them with my company and lose all credibility, right?
Yeah.
So how, because credibility, integrity, that kind of thing is super important, right?
Super important. Yes.
So
Yeah.
walk me through this for this thing, and people can look it up.
So I'll back up too and say that the ROS is similar to like Google Street View, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some people will they're comfortable using it. Other people, like myself, depending on the geographic area, they don't want to use it because I think it might have a like negative connotation if you put an offer price and it's like too low. The ROS product is not on InvestorHub yet, but the way that we're getting the pricing is through like a market value assessment, and like I can't really go into like who we're using and how we're getting it, but basically, if you were to order the product, you will get the first top properties, the first 10 properties that are on your list. It will actually show you the offer price that we would put on the letter. And you have a range. So we have an offer meter 1 through 4, 1 being like a lowball offer and 4 being like a very close to market value offer, and 2 and 3 in between. So you can actually select 1, 2, 3, or 4. And then at the end, you can take a look at the price that it would offer based on 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you can change it as well after that. Okay, so it gives you the, yep, it gives you the option to change it after you see what the offer would be.
Yeah, well, I can see where with you're using different lists, using those different numbers would be really useful. Like if you're doing, say, a low equity list and you're trying to pick up maybe sub 2 deals or something, right? You could have a higher number. Yeah, that kind of thing. I'm let's see.
What I see the best where that's really used well is lower price point areas. Mm-hmm. Like for areas where you're buying properties at like 400,000, 500,000, probably in your market and in my market.
Yeah.
I probably not the best use, to be quite honest. I think lower price points, it's going to be better. Again, you can test it, but I would think that postcards and letters are going to work better in our areas.
Well, that's useful information, because even though like we're not that far from Seattle and Tacoma and that kind of thing, we're a lot higher prices, and my area is getting up there. You can be 30 minutes away from way more depressed markets, right? Mm-hmm. And so, and in those towns and counties, I'm thinking, Grays Harbor County, Mason County, Lewis County, the buyer pool, the houses are older, less expensive. The sellers are maybe less sophisticated. And also, it's just, there's a huge array of like, what's wrong with these houses, right? From being so old, and then harbor towns with moisture and all that stuff. It's crazy. So that's something that could definitely maybe have legs to it in those communities. If you're seeing a correlation there with the lower price point, that helps. Yeah.
I think the lower price point is definitely getting much better responses with the ROS product than a higher price point area.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. So maybe give you a chance. So on the mail side, what other new products, because the ROS thing was pretty new, what other new products do you maybe have in the pipeline on the mail side of things?
So 2 things that we're testing out right now is actual handwritten letters. So that's something that we're testing right now to see how it works, and looking at response rates and all that, because that is an option that people are looking for on smaller volume. Mm-hmm. And then something else where we're working on is augmented reality, like QR codes.
Okay.
So where, it's a QR code on your letter, and then when they take their phone and they kind of go into their like camera app, what shows up is actually a video of you talking to them. Okay. So that is something that we're testing in my market to see how that works, and also like the friction points. there's a lot of like click-throughs that you have to do to make it work on your phone. And it's just like, all right, are we going to see that potential sellers are actually going to click through all those buttons to really view this video? So we're testing that aspect out too.
I would have said no a year ago, right? But now, I mean, the QR codes have been out forever, right? They've been out for years and years and years, but a lot of people, me included, like never ever used one ever, right?
Yeah.
But then now all of a sudden you have to have like touchless menus at restaurants and stuff. And so you're using QR codes and sign them. And so now it's like forced, same thing with Zoom calls, right?
Yeah.
How hard was it to get sellers on a Zoom call a year ago versus now when it's like, hey, yeah, we could do a Zoom call. Okay, cool. Like, let's do it. And so I would say it's definitely different now, and it has a better shot, I think.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point. We tested this about a year ago, and the technology just wasn't there. Like there was so many friction points for people not to like click through. And we did a big test, and I think out of like 20,000, maybe like 5 people click through. So it's like, all right, that doesn't really make sense for the cost that it would require and all the work that it would do. But now we're going back because the technology has gotten better since the last year. And also to your point, I think people are getting more comfortable using QR codes and being able to click through to a web to their like a web page.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Okay, that's awesome. I look forward to checking it out when it's ready. And so maybe I'll give you a brief plug. I know you're very adamant about not really going into selling your stuff, and I definitely appreciate that. But I want to let everybody know, I use your InvestorHub product, and I do mail out of that. And so I was one of the more early users, or just after your first phase of beta testers. And I've seen changes and stuff, things moving along, but maybe if you could briefly describe that product, what you have, maybe other things that it might replace, and how it affects other people out there like me that could use it, and maybe use it in their toolbox.
Yeah, sure. So with InvestorHub, like the goal for InvestorHub was really to get investors to understand or learn how to market. Most investors do not know how to market properly or understand the prospects to market to. So I wanted to kind of go back to the drawing board and figure out, okay, well, when people go direct to seller on the marketing, how do they know which prospects that they really need to reach out to and like focus on? Because most investors that we've seen at Open Letter, they'll have a list of 10,000 people and they'll market to them the same exact way. So I said, okay, well, I know within those 10,000 prospects, there are going to be prospects that are much higher quality than other prospects. And I'll give you an example that I think most people will know. If you have an absentee list and a driving for dollars list, you could have people, or you could have properties that are in both lists. Okay. People that are on multiple lead lists are generally going to be a much higher quality prospect than somebody that might just be on like an equity list. Right. So if somebody's in driving for dollars list, tax lien, absentee owner, that person is going to be a higher quality prospect than somebody that's just an equity owner. So if you now can understand prospects and segment them in that way, high quality, medium quality, low quality, and really spend your time and focus on those high quality ones rather than all 10,000 evenly, now you can really put more money into those high quality prospects and really look down and market to them much more actively and market less to the people that are maybe on a low quality, right? So now instead of marketing evenly across all 10,000, you're marketing maybe 70% of your marketing budget to your high quality, 20% to your medium quality, and 10% to your low quality people, so that your return on investment is going to be much higher because you're focused in the right areas. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, and other folks will also call that lead stacking, right? And that's where I'd used a different product prior to that, and the reason I switched over was one, I like being able to help kind of guide and tweak the product a little bit or get input or that kind of thing. But two, I could actually order my mail and stuff from the same thing and not have to do a download CSV file, upload CSV file, map it out with the other product, and go through that you had to do when you're going between services, because it's just you end up with a million
Yes.
CSV files all over the place, right?
Yeah, that was the other big thing is like not only so once you understand like what prospects to market to, we wanted to create like a marketing campaign dashboard, because there's no system right now where you can look at your whole marketing campaign from like the top view. A lot of people have like a direct mail vendor here, a text message vendor over here, ringless voicemail vendor over here. So if you were to look and say, all right, when are all these different activities triggering? And how do I manage all these people? Like you have so many different CSVs with so many different vendors, like how do you track it all? So that was another critical aspect is we wanted you to be able to, at a high level, be able to have a marketing campaign for everything, execute your direct mail from within the system, but also you can export easily and go right to your other vendors very easily. But you can manage it all in one place. So if somebody calls you back and says, hey, remove me from your list, you still do it in InvestorHub, and it will remove the person off the list on all future marketing activities. So if you need to export a list for, text messaging, that person's not going to be on there anymore. So you truly have this database, this system to manage the people that are falling off the list as you're sending them marketing activities.
And then is there any sort of timeline? So for example, if I pull a new sold list, right, that I'm going to remove from there, well, maybe in 2 years, maybe I don't want that removed anymore. Does it stay in that still in the removed sold list, or is there a certain like time that maybe that comes out?
It still does stay in the remove sold list because so it's you might not want to add them back onto the list unless you specifically find them later on. For instance, what happens if they were on a driving for dollars list, somebody buys it, fixes it up, and you're not going to really want to put them back on their list. So it's a little bit more challenging to figure out what circumstance do you want to put them back on their list. If you do find them back on a driving for dollars list, but then you find that it was sold like 2 years ago, then it's up to your discretion to put them back on that list. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Does it? So when I put it in the sold category, remove sold or whatever, right? Does the system actually track when I did that, so that then I could look at, okay, I want to look at the ones that I put in more than 2 years ago, right? And then being able to, okay, those you can go back into the maybe marketing lists, right? Because I mean, how often does a VA buyer have a divorce and something, and you bought the house a year ago, right?
What we don't have that functionality now, but in the version 2.0, we will have that functionality.
Okay, awesome.
Because we're working to get a license agreement to have data on all properties throughout the country. So when you upload a list, it's going to be pulling all the information like bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, mortgage, market value, like all of the details, and then last sold date, right? So you will be able to sift and sort through all that stuff later on.
Awesome. Are you tying in a mobile app with that data?
Mobile app is to come, but that's probably going to be not till next year.
Okay.
Because we are changing or adding a ton of functionality into what we have right now.
Okay.
We truly want to build this out to the next big void in the market is really having a system like you have batch leads, REI Sift, all that stuff that focuses on prospects. And then you have tons of CRMs that focus on leads. You have no platform that focuses on everything, right? That's what we were trying to do with OLM Investor Hub combined with OLM Deal Flow. So the solution to that is the functionality. So OLM Investor Hub will be able to do prospect creation all the way through closing the deal. And once we have that full cycle, the KPIs and the information that we can report back to you are going to be like nothing people have seen before. So you can actually go back and say, what list did this deal come from? How many times did I market to them? How much time did it take to go from when they were a lead to I close the deal. On average, how long do my deals take to go from lead to closing a deal? How much money do I make? What's my return on investment? Like all that stuff that a lot of people want. You really can't get that data right now. And the system, as we start to expand it, that's what we're looking to do.
So will there be browser-based calling out of it?
We are looking into that, yeah, as well. Yep, we
It's,
want to be able to call, like, this is my kind of wish list: calling, ringless voicemail, text messaging, all of that stuff, email marketing,
mhm.
so all of that.
So the reason I asked that is so, like, I came from a different industry, and sales manager and that kind of thing, and like the auto industry, and being able to, because if you have a salesperson, so I'm thinking of this as like, okay, the scaling up thing, the adding to the team thing, like that kind of stuff. You can't, if they're using their cell phone, if they're using pretty much anything, you can't really keep track of how many calls did my guy make today, right? Like, what did he go through? Did he call all these prospects? Unless it's like tied to it where they have to do it like in their browser or that kind of thing, right? And that's one thing. I have access to a white labeled version of what is it? Pipe, or no, it's called High Level, right? I don't know. You
Okay,
might know
yeah.
that. Yeah. And so a bunch of different ones white label it and call it something else or whatever.
Yep.
But that calling inside the browser and that kind of thing is a huge advantage of that. Plus, with the VAs maybe outside the country, right, and being able to make a local phone call.
Yep, absolutely.
So that's awesome. And so your 2.0, at least it sounds like you have 3.0 in the pipeline too.
I think I have up to 5.0.
Okay. So 2.0, what's your, I know you don't want to give a date, but give me an estimate, give me an idea of when you're trying to have this going.
I am hoping by Q3 we'll have it rolled out.
Okay.
We are redesigning pretty much everything in what we have now, and making the functionality and the UI, we're changing it up because we're adding so much functionality to it. And we're working with your buddy, thanks to you, where we got connected with, this guy's like the man too.
Yeah.
He's like does really, really big stuff.
He's a big deal now. He's totally a big deal now.
He's a
Yeah.
really big deal. And the stuff that we have that we're working on, it's going to be nothing that anybody's seen in this industry before. I can absolutely guarantee it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm excited about it. We're investing a ton of money and time into it, so it's gonna be awesome.
Cool. Let me know when that coupon code comes in the mail for me or whatever. So that's, yeah, I'll just plug my buddy's company. He's a developer in Florida now for a company called Very Big Things, and he gets all sorts of awards and huge clients, and he's a cool guy too. And I knew him way back when he had trouble, when he was a 19-year-old kid working for me. So, and did 19-year-old kid stuff. And so it's just kind of cool seeing what he's turned into, because he's done phenomenal. Okay, well, cool. So I think I kind of touched on the stuff that I wanted to maybe go through with you. I got one more. So with this is something I'm looking for right now. So I'll give you an example of the use case. So I'm getting probate data with all the leads, right? With the company, and that's just their deal is probates, and they get the attorney info, they get the PR, they get the deceit, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I am trying to automate my campaigns that go off of this data that comes out. And now the list itself is not super big, but off of that list, you have the PR, you have the attorney,
Mm-hmm.
you have, maybe an error, right? And then you're going to do multiple runs of different pieces or whatever for each person on this list, including the attorneys. And so the list itself is small, but the amount of mailers you're going to send is significantly bigger, right? Because it's a high value list. And so
Yep.
with that, so I have a different product. I can create the flow. So after 3 weeks, then send this piece, and after 4 weeks, send this piece, and then I trigger that campaign for that particular piece of mail or client or prospect or whatever, right? How can I do that with you guys?
So are you asking, how do I send mail to each person, like the PR, the attorney and all that stuff, or how do I send different mail pieces?
So if I want to build out, let's just say I want to build out Ryan's amazing probate campaign.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's got these 4 pieces that hit at certain times, and then maybe
Yep.
another one in 6 months. And then I have the Ryan's amazing attorney campaign, right? That has like maybe a couple pieces that go. And then maybe I make Ryan's amazing heir campaign. And so when I send this list, or I put this list in, either click a button or send an email, and then I know, okay, that happens. And that one is in the cycle, and it's hit until I get a call that says, don't ever call us again, or the house sold.
Yeah.
Because I want to be able to take it out just like you do with those text messages and like the deliverables. But I want to be able to get it in that cycle so it's happening, and I don't have to go and create a new mailer and then create a new mailer and then create a new mailer, right?
Yep. That's so with that, to be honest, that's tough, because if you're going to send different mail pieces to the different people, those are completely separate campaigns, right? They're on their own campaign. And then even in the system InvestorHub, they follow the same property. So we are focused on the property on InvestorHub. So we are looking at, with InvestorHub, being able to send multiple mail pieces like the PR and the attorney, right? So you can send 2 different mail pieces to 2 different addresses based on that address. But to be able to send different mailers depending on which status, that's that's like really tough, because now there is no way for you. It's so specific. It's very specific on what you want to do. That when we look to build out features, we're like, how many people are going to get this specific? Does everybody want? If everybody wants it, it's a no-brainer. But if only a small segment of people, will adding this feature solve the problem for that small batch of people? But it might confuse the shit out of the large majority of people on what it is, what that
I'm good at that.
does, right? Yeah. So
Really
so that's where we have to figure out, does it make sense? Is there enough people that really do this very specific way of marketing? And if there isn't, is it going to confuse other people? And if it is, then I don't know if we're going to add that functionality. That's how I'm trying to make sure that we're adopting the right features and functionality. I know what you're saying, and it's a good question. I just don't know if we're going to get there for.
Totally. And where this is, and I can take it offline with you later, but like, so
yeah,
a competitor is tied in with a Driving for Dollars app that I am in relationship to, that's also part of my CRM company or whatever that I use. And so they linked up, and so they figured now the customization is not there with it, but they have X number of pieces, they have a few probate pieces, but it's not necessarily what I want, right? And it's setting up that campaign and clicking a button, and because they have so many, number of clients and everything going through, and the pieces are basically the same, you can create that flow, and then the mail house is like, okay, we're doing this much volume, right? In these pieces. So I like where it's not quite there, but it's slightly higher than like your 1,000-piece mailer or that kind of thing pricing, right? But all the leads pricing is like $1.50 a letter or something, and I'm like, kind of thing, and so it adds up. But I put that on my wish list. All right.
Okay. Yeah. No. Any suggestions, recommendations, all that stuff? You know that I love hearing this stuff, because it gets me to think about things that I didn't normally think about, and it's great to hear. So I'm always appreciative of your feedback.
Yeah, and I just throw this out there for anyone else that's on here, if they have any other questions for you before we let you go. I selfishly got most of my questions answered. Let me see, and then give them a quick second. But so now I think some more people probably know the story now, because you were on like Bigger Pockets, and you kind of got to go into some of your stuff. But you spent basically 4 months like traveling around the country in an RV with your family while your business was still going on. But all your businesses are still going on.
Yeah. Right? So that was a big thing. Like 10 years ago when I started, I was like, and man, my wife, I took her right through so much stuff. I never just had one job. I always had like 2 jobs, or 2 things that I was doing, or 3 things that I was doing. But I said the goal for us is for me to quit my job so I can run my businesses, so we can take more vacations, because the first like 8 years or 7 years were just like a absolute grind. So that was the goal, is to be able to have business or businesses where we didn't have to be in one place and it would run on autopilot. So yeah, last year, September through December, we basically traveled the country. We got an RV, traveled the country, and got to see a lot of amazing stuff. And while the businesses were still running, and the end of this month, we're going again for another trip for about a month and a half, so we can travel and enjoy ourselves. And still, the businesses are running. I'm still doing stuff, but the day to day, I'm not required to be here, and the business can run kind of without me.
I think that's the goal for most people that get into some sort of entrepreneurial thing, is just not having to be somewhere when someone says you have to be there, right?
Yes.
You know, and it's, everybody screams that they want financial freedom and stuff, but you know, it's sometimes it's tough convincing the wife what it takes to get to that point, right?
Yes, that was yeah. If you don't have that, if you have a spouse or, you know, a significant other, and you don't have the support of your spouse, you know, if I didn't have the support of my wife, I probably wouldn't be here, because it would have been too challenging to kind of overcome that, in addition to all the stuff that you have to do, because there are a lot of sacrifices, time away, time invested in the business, yeah, all that stuff.
Awesome. Well, I don't see anything else coming over, Justin. I appreciate you hopping on with us and kind of telling us a little bit about your deal. And you know, I will include in the comments or whatever a link over to your company, your site, your products and stuff. And you know, we'll obviously connect more and more, I'm sure, as time goes, because you know, I like using your product and I like working with you guys.
Awesome. So, yeah, and if anybody has any questions or whatever, you can give them my email, my direct email. Happy to answer any questions. The goal for me is always to provide value. Like, I'm not going to tell you to, you know, if you look at Open Letter, I'm never going to tell you to order something if I don't think it's the right fit. I just want to make sure that whatever I tell you, I'm providing the value and the right, you know, feedback for people.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. And, you know, this is the earliest I've ever done one of these. So, you know, I don't do that for just anybody, man. Sometimes the East Coast thing, man, the East Coast thing, I'm like, I'm doing stuff and I'm like, God damn it, they closed an hour ago.
I know. I feel the same way, man. When we were traveling around, I loved being on the West Coast, the timing. I liked it so much better. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then I get like the proof email at like 6 a.m. or something, and I don't get to it like 4 or 5 hours later. It's just like,
right.
Yeah. So awesome, man. Thanks again. And we'll connect soon.
Anytime. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Bye.